Welcome into Out of Bounds alongside with John Luck. I'm Brian Berard. Of course, John, it's the summer. Take a couple weeks off here and there, but football season's right around the corner, so we'll start doing these weekly, hopefully.
We'll have to see the paycheck clears through.
So just a quick reminder that you can follow us on Twitter at BTVOB, and you can like us on Facebook by going to facebook.com/BTVOB. I know we're not really extremely active, but that's where you can find an archive of a lot of shows.
We're not active? That's how we end up like this?
No, definitely not active. So we'll get right into the sports talk. The Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees had a 4-game series here at Fenway Park. And this is a big series, John, for both teams. If the Yankees could pull off a couple wins, actually a few wins, they could really get back into the division. If the Red Sox got a couple wins, they could really put the division out of reach. Not only did they put the division, not only did they sweep, but I think the division is really it's done now. The AL East belongs to the Red Sox.
Well, I think there's still time for this thing to get a little bit closer. Granted, it is a 9.5 game lead, but the Red Sox and the Yankees are both playing under 500 opposition the entire way through the month of August. You see the AL East standings right there. It's really Red Sox and Yankees, and that's really it. And I think the Yankees, they did have a couple of injuries, so Aaron Judge wasn't in the lineup, Gary Sanchez wasn't in the lineup. You have to wonder what those two would do as far as maybe getting the Yankees 1 or 2 games out of that 4-game split. But going forward here, the Yankees have to win probably 20-25 games coming up through the rest of the month to even keep this thing close. But for the Red Sox, they have to be careful not to let their foot off the pedal. We've seen in the past with large leads going into the month of September that sometimes things don't work out, and there is that big injury to Chris Sale.
Well, look, that's because the Portland Sea Dogs were pitching down the stretch in September.
Yeah, it wasn't the chicken, beer, and video games.
Well, also the sobriety did have a bit to do with it. But the big takeaway I have from this series is the Yankees, the body language that they had. I mean, they just gave up in all these games. I mean, it was, especially in that last game, you had that 4-1 lead, and when you got to the bottom ninth, you kind of had that, the rally for the Red Sox, obviously, which tied it up. You had a ground ball to Miguel Andujar, the third baseman for the Yankees, that could have easily ended the game, and he just nonchalantly couldn't have cared less, threw it over to first base. And the first baseman, it was a tough play to make. I mean, you really can't blame the first baseman there. But after that, you knew once they tied the game, it was just over. Like they just weren't in the game.
But even before that, you go back to Game 1. The Yankees had a 4-1 lead, I think, going into the bottom of the 4th inning. The Red Sox went off for 11 unanswered runs at that point. I think Game 1 is when the Yankees really hit the skids because don't forget Game 2, Rick Porcello came out through a one-hitter. Complete game on 86 pitches, which is pretty crazy for a Red Sox-Yankees game, but still, I think Game 1 is where this thing really took a turn already for the Yankees.
And honestly, it was my favorite player, Jackie Bradley Jr., that started that with a boneheaded base running mistake. He luckily got away with it. It really it was like a big snowball effect and just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you sit there and go, all right, you know what, we still have 3 games left. And then Rick Porcello, 2 mistake pitches away from free furniture and a perfect game. I know, right? I could have got free. I didn't buy anything, but I could have. The opportunity
was there. Free couch or free bed?
Yeah, could have, but the opportunity was there, and I didn't because I don't need furniture. But still, I mean, but and here's another thing that I really was wowed by in this 4-game series: games 2 and 3. 2.5 hours and 2 hours and 20 minutes?
I will take that any day of the week.
I'm sitting there going, whoa, like I have so much extra time now. I wasn't expecting this.
It's all right. Then we had to pay for it on Sunday night and stay up till 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you bring in ESPN and you bring in the nationally televised game. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Did you watch any of that Sunday night game?
I watched it. I tried to just block the sound out.
So I want to talk to you about that broadcast there. And I mean, just Jessica Mendoza and Alex Rodriguez, you just want to bash your head off the wall. You just want to stick pencils in your eyes.
I wouldn't suggest doing that. That might hurt.
But at one point, I mean, all of them were, well, Jessica Mendoza and Alex Rodriguez were talking about, I forget who the Yankees pitcher was at the time, but he was talking about their socks and the pants and how high they were and how low they were, and this is definitely hard-hitting baseball analysis, John.
Well, unfortunately, when you have a Red Sox-Yankees game, especially on national television, you're talking about right off the bat, no pun intended, a 3.5, 4.5 hour game. So at some point, you're trying to turn this into just a conversational deal, but the issue that they run into on ESPN is they're not accustomed to a local audience. We're used to the whole Don and Jerry situation where they can go ahead and pull teeth out of Jerry Remy's head, and it's funny. But for a Boston audience watching a nationally televised game once every couple weeks, you just don't really relate to the announcers, and that's the issue you run into, and especially with Alex Rodriguez trying to relate to a Boston audience.
Yeah, I totally get that, but I actually like Matt Vasgersian in that game. I mean, because for some reason, ESPN is absolutely in love with exit velocity and launch angle and all this stuff that I really don't care about.
Sabermetrics.
I mean, I believe in Game 4, Giancarlo Stanton had a single that was 121 miles an hour off the bat. And A-Rod and Jessica Mendoza just absolutely went off on that. And Vasgersian's like, I would rather hit a ball 80 miles an hour over the monster for a home run than a single to left field.
You're trying to make the game interesting to people who maybe aren't interested in baseball, because this is the crunch time for baseball. The fact that for July and August, they're the only sport in town. Nobody's going to really watch preseason football, maybe the first quarter, first half. But for July and August, it's all Major League Baseball. You have to make it interesting for everybody.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about baseball here. I think it's for the most part, the AL East is wrapped up. It's the Red Sox have that. Yankees, it's not over, I will tell you that, but for the most part, they're sober this time. We think. We don't know.
Sorry.
But so in baseball, we'll talk about the wild card. The Yankees pretty much have that wild card one spot, unless if they falter. But like you said, John, I think the rest of their opponents are below 500, except for the Red Sox. Yeah. The Oakland Athletics are absolutely on a tear right now. They're trying to catch up to Seattle, who is going the complete opposite way. I think they have maybe 9 wins in their last 40 or so games. So in that wild card slot, you have the AL West, and don't forget, Oakland's still trying to catch up to Houston in the AL West. There's a lot of good races going down the stretch here in baseball.
The AL West is going to be one of the more intriguing races to watch as we go through the rest of August and September. Oakland just acquired Mike Fiers from Detroit, so that's going to maybe solidify a little bit of their starting rotation. You also have Chris Davis, who I think is over 30 home runs this season. And it just seems like Oakland always comes out of nowhere. It's this money ball method that they always play. Really not the biggest salary in baseball, not the smallest salary in baseball, but they kind of just make these small deals that some way, somehow work out. And I'll get to the Houston Astros coming up later in the show, but I think there's going to be some issues for the Houston Astros, not just Roberto Osuna, but George Springer's hurt, Jose Altuve's hurt, Lance McCullers, I think his name is hurt. So the injuries are starting to mount up for the Houston Astros, and maybe some locker room issues as well. So the Oakland Athletics may be inching closer and closer to a AL West championship.
And they have a player in Jed Lowry that I would love to see the Red Sox try to go after and get maybe in like trade or something.
We should get guys like him.
Yeah, I wish that Jed Lowry was on the Red Sox. He's a good player. All right, so we'll end our baseball talk with that. The National Football League has inducted several members into their Hall of Fame class, of course headlined by Randy Moss, Ray Lewis. Of course, Randy Moss played for the New England Patriots. A nice little moment where they show Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft there on the Jumbotron. Everyone decided to boo the bejesus out of them, but you're taking a look at the Hall of Fame class right here. I mean, Bobby Beathard, Robert Brazil, Brian Dawkins, Jerry Kramer, Ray Lewis, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, that's a big one, and Brian Urlacher. John, which one of those players do you think was the best in that class?
So I think you have to look at Randy Moss as one of the better players on that list of players, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Randy Moss, 23 touchdown receptions in 2007. Remember, 2007, that was the meat wagon of a football team for the New England Patriots. And a lot of people talk about the undefeated season. They talk about Tom Brady. Randy Moss is maybe third or fourth on that list of most talked about things on the 07 Patriots. He was also a member of the All-Decades team of the 2000s. But here's the interesting thing when you look at the numbers. He led the NFL in touchdown receptions in 5 seasons, 98, 2000, 03, 07, and 09. He was consistently one of the better wide receivers for a good 10 to 12-year period.
Yeah, he was one of the, if not the most feared wide receiver to play the game. To me, I feel like it's a toss-up between Randy Moss and Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis was able to actually get that Super Bowl ring, unlike Randy Moss. And we all know that Ray Lewis had his off-the-field issues that we won't bring up, but he was one of the most feared linebackers in the game. I think Tom Brady said he's probably one of the toughest players that he's ever had to play against. And I mean, Brian Dawkins was a very good defensive back for the Philadelphia Eagles. And of course, Ed Reed now has the chance of getting into next year's Hall of Fame class, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. But I mean, to me, Ray Lewis was one of the most dominant defensive players in the game, alongside with Brian Urlacher. A lot of great players on that list. You really can't single out one of those players. But we'll take a look, in next year's eligibles. A stacked list right here, and these are just some of them. Champ Bailey, Tony Gonzalez, Ed Reed, as I mentioned, Edgerrin James, Ty Law, John Lynch, Alan Faneca, and Isaac Bruce. I mean, John, You can't put them all in there, but who, 3 or 4 guys, who are you going to put in?
So Ed Reed, I think, is very interesting, along with Champ Bailey. The interesting thing to note here is that a safety has been inducted into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot since 1986. I think either Reed or Bailey is going to buck that trend. Tony Gonzalez, in my eyes, is going to be a slam dunk for the Hall of Fame. A lot of people think about Rob Gronkowski and what he brings to the Patriots offense. Tony Gonzalez brought more to his offenses. Listen to these stats here. He was second in most career receptions in NFL history with 1,325, sixth in most receiving yards with just over 15,000, and seventh all-time in touchdown receptions with 111. So I think Tony Gonzalez right now is probably one of the slam dunks for 2019.
Yeah, I agree with you. Tony Gonzalez right there. Alan Faneca was one of the best offensive linemen that you've ever seen. Champ Bailey, of course, was a very shut-down corner. A lot of people like Edgerrin James. I feel like he kind of...
He's probably one of those bubble names.
Yeah, I think he kind of flamed out towards the end of his career. Ty Law, I really like him. Of course, I'm a Patriots fan. You want to put Ty Law in there. But, I mean, there's a lot of great names on that list. But here's the thing. We are now entering this point of the Hall of Fame, all sports where it's performance-enhancing drugs. And all these guys did test clean, but we are starting to enter that age where it's, all right. So when we do get to that point, we're starting to enter that point in baseball right now. I mean, look, we see that's why Roger Clemens isn't getting in, Barry Bonds isn't going to get in, Rafael Palmeiro, Sammy Sosa, blah, 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 blah. Do you think the NFL is going to have this issue? Because you really haven't seen many players test positive for performance-enhancing drugs. I mean, some of them have, but do you think the NFL is really going to see this issue when it comes to Hall of Fame voting?
I mean, it could be an issue. I don't think it's going to be as glaring of an issue as what you see in Major League Baseball, because I think the NFL eventually you're going to have to start talking about maybe allowing some performance-enhancing drugs to try and combat the concussions. But I think at this point, even going into baseball, a PED user, I think if they have Hall of Fame numbers, I think you let them into the Hall of Fame, because I think you use this as a teaching tool. It's kind of like the blackball era back in the 1920s. I think, you talk about Shoeless Joe Jackson. Why not have the PED part of sports be featured in sports history? It's a part of the era that we've lived in.
All right. So we'll wrap up our baseball and NFL talk. On the other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the New England Patriots. Don't go anywhere. More Out of Bounds right after this.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. Since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. Guys, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early. You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Out of Bounds. Alongside, as always, with John Luck, I'm Brian Berard. Talk some Red Sox, we've talked some NFL football. Now it's time to move a little bit more local again with football. Talk about the New England Patriots as training camp is now open. All the players are there, they're practicing. So, John, give me some of your storylines from Patriots training camp this year.
So I think the interesting thing to start off with is the relationship between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Right now it looks like status quo to what we've seen for the past 17, 18 years. They're walking around, kidding with each other. The one glaring aspect of training camp that I've noticed is the wide receiver position. Julian Edelman, as we know, gone for the first 4 games of the season. Malcolm Mitchell, I think, was kind of a surprising cut for this part of training camp. So now you're down potentially 2 of your top 3 wide receivers. So you look at the wide receiving core right now. Chris Hogan's your top 1. Cordell Patterson's number 2. Then you have Kenny Britt, Eric Decker, who just signed on for a $750,000 deal. So I think the first 4 games in the preseason, the big thing to look for is the wide receiver and how Tom Brady matches up with them.
Yeah, absolutely. That wide receiver battle is going to be a pretty good one. Same thing at running back. I mean, you have a lot of guys in there. I mean, you brought in Jeremy Hill. You still have James White. What do we do with Burkhead? What do we do with Gillislee? So I think wide receiver and in running backs. And don't forget, you also drafted Sony Michel from Georgia. So I think those are the two positions you're really going to look a lot to, or look really into to see who's going to really be your 1 and 2 there. I mean, like you said, no Julian Edelman. So the first 4 weeks of the season, Chris Hogan's probably your number 1 receiver. I know we hear that Cordarrelle Patterson's really having a great training camp, but he's really more of a special teams guy like Matthew Slater. But maybe the Patriots are going to try to incorporate him. We don't know. Malcolm Mitchell's now off the team because he still can't come back from injury. That's one thing I really want to look forward to, is because we all know Brady's bunch there. He likes to take his receivers out to Montana or Dakota or wherever he likes to bring them out to, someplace allegedly in the United States, but it could be in Russia somewhere, and they like to go practice. So it's, how is Tom Brady's chemistry going to be with these receivers? That's really going to be a big question.
For Tom Brady at this age, his game isn't throwing the ball 40, 50 yards down the field. It's those little dink and dunk passes. And Rex Burkhead last season, especially as he got close to the playoffs, I think he kind of filled that role as the Wes Welker, Danny Amendola type of player. Go up 5 yards, go inside. So I think Burkhead's probably going to be the main target as we go through the first 4 games of the season. But going back to Sony Michel, he had that knee operation, so he's out for the preseason. Hopefully he'll be back for the first game of the regular season, but again, that's another question mark for the Patriots. They have a few question marks this training camp.
Don't worry, we have Danny Etling to take over as the future number 58 on the roster, number 1 in your hearts. So the Patriots' first preseason game, of course, Thursday night against the Washington Redskins.
Can we say Redskins?
Well, I just did, so it's kind of too late now.
Oops.
Yeah. So, I don't know. So on the defensive side of the ball, that was always the big question mark for the Patriots. We saw in Super Bowl 52, they gave up, 120 points to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah,
they didn't really address that defensive side of the ball. So, John, are we seeing another team where it's just we hope we outscore you, kind of win the game 35-33 type of thing?
Well, you have to hope so, because don't forget, you don't have Matt Patricia. He's now with the Detroit Lions. So we're going to be opening up the 2018 season without a defensive coordinator, more or less. Brian Fuentes, they gave him some long title, but
Flores.
It was one of those names. I picked one. Anyways, I think one of the glaring issues is the fact that you don't have Malcolm Butler. He's now in Tennessee, so now you have Devin and Jason McCourty in your secondary taking over. So I think that's going to be one of the big things to look out for. And like you said, the key for the Patriots on the defensive side of the ball is probably keeping teams under 40.
Well, the good thing on the defensive side of the ball is Stephon Gilmore has absolutely been lights out in training camp from what we've seen. I think now that he knows he's that number 1 guy in a big market that's going to be a playoff team, most likely going to be a playoff team, I think he's finally stepping up to the challenge, and hopefully the McCourty twins can hold down and, hopefully you have a good enough offense that can outscore that team. But having that defense
it's going to be the Pittsburgh game all over again, where it's like 40-33 in the final 2 minutes. The Philadelphia game, it's going to be down to the wire, I feel like, every week.
All right. Well, we'll stick with football. We're going to go even more local.
How much more local can we go?
Well, you know what, John? We're going to go to the Out of Bounds Fantasy Football League. No, just kidding.
I'd win that.
John, I already know I'm winning. I already won the best team name. But anyways.
What name?
Well, we're not going to say that. But we're going to give you a little preview of the Bridgewater State University Bears football team. Last year, John, a rather forgettable season for the Bears. They went 2-8 last year, and they lost a lot of key guys. They lost Alex McLaughlin and Malik Garrett. They have Stevie D'Amelio as the quarterback at BR, and Jack Levanchi is going to come back for his senior season. But what can we expect out of the Bridgewater State Bears this year?
Well, the 2-8 record is maybe a little misleading, because the first 4 losses of the season, I think it was by a combined 10 points or something like that. But Stefano D'Amelio most likely is going to be your starting quarterback. Jack Levanchi, like you said, going to be most likely your standout wide receiver. And I think for 2018, it's going to have to be just one of those situations where the coaching staff maybe mixes up the plays. The games I was watching, the first play of the set of downs, it was a running play at the middle. Second play, off tackle. Third play was 3rd and maybe 6 or 7. They try and launch it 40 yards down the field. And it was that continuous offense all game long that I feel like set them back. And I feel like if they maybe mix things up a little bit, maybe you can get a couple extra wins here. But I feel like 500 is maybe the goal for the Bears this season.
Yeah, the run, pass, punt offense is really an extremely effective offense. I saw it for my BC Eagles last year. They did the same thing, run, pass, punt. And then they said, hey, you know what? let's switch things up. Maybe let's pass it on second down. So I think that's right. I mean, Joe Varia now in his third season as the head guy there at Bridgewater State. Hopefully can open up some things. I mean, Stephen D'Amelio has a pretty good arm. I mean, of course, when he played at Bridgewater Rainham, Coach Buron loves to run the ball a lot, but I think you're going to have to really rely on to open up that offense. And, of course, the first game of the year, September 1st against Buffalo State. You're going to see that one on BTV. I won't be there, though. John Luck, I believe that you'll be there. You'll be on the call.
I believe so.
So,
we'll
John
see if
Luck.
I'm still here in a month.
Yeah, well, you don't know. I mean, with all this heat and humidity, it's awful.
It's my new weight loss plan. Just slim down.
And, of course, on our next Out of Bounds, we'll preview the Bridgewater Rainham football season. But don't go anywhere. We got more Out of Bounds right after this. We're going to give you our final thoughts.
Eva Marie smoked 12,000 packs of cigarettes over 15 years. She quit, and now there's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. No matter how much you smoked, early detection could save you. Talk to your doctor or learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back to Out of Bounds. Well, we had some Red Sox talk, some football talk, Patriots and Bridgewater State, but now it's time for our final thoughts. John, take it away.
So I'm going to go back to baseball here. I referred to it earlier in the program, the fact that Roberto Osuna was acquired by the Houston Astros. And for those that don't know about Osuna, he was suspended 75 games for violating the MLB's domestic violence policy. Now, during that suspension, he was acquired by the Houston Astros. Before he was acquired, Justin Verlander had some very interesting comments, including sending out a tweet saying, "I hope the rest of your life without baseball is horrible. You deserve all that is coming your way." Lance McCullers said, "The issue here is no one cared as much until a video was leaked and now everyone is outraged." There's a lot of red flags, I feel like, with the Houston Astros. And I feel like this is a situation where the general manager and ownership put winning above everything else. I feel like this is a situation where maybe ownership and the general manager maybe takes a poll of the locker room and see if the entire team wants a player like Roberto Osuna on their team. Baseball-wise, he's a good closer, but just the PR nightmare that he brings to the Houston Astros right now, especially in a pennant chase race, I feel like there's some real red flags here that the Houston Astros look past in a very serious situation.
Yeah, it's really that's a tough situation to handle, but I believe the Astros made that trade. It's, hey, we'll trade you our headache and we'll take your headache. And he still has an open court case in Toronto. That's
September 5th.
Yeah, that's coming up pretty soon. So if, let's say, it doesn't really go in his favor and he has some other legal issues to deal with, that's a pretty big loss if the Houston Astros.
Potentially after that trial, just quickly here, I think I read he could serve somewhere between 4 and 7 years in prison. So the Houston Astros could have a real disaster on their hands, not just from a baseball standard.
All right, well, I'm going to move my final thoughts on to the NFL. As you know, the NFL has yet another new helmet rule. I believe it is Rule 12, Section 8, Article 2, or something like that.
I'll look it up over here.
It says that if you drop your head and lead with your helmet, and it's the first thing that makes contact, you get a 15-yard penalty, and you are possibly ejected from the game. Now, I understand what the NFL is doing. They're trying to make the game safer, and I totally get that. I'm on board with that. However, all it takes is for one player to shift their head a little bit, and there's that little contact that's made, and you throw a flag, and that's 15 yards. I have a feeling that this rule is going to come back and haunt someone in a big moment in a big game. I mean, we saw last year, remember the Patriots and the Steelers? The catch rule, was that a catch or not? Was it a touchdown or not? And it turns out that was a catch. That was absolutely a touchdown. But due to that stupid rule, the Patriots got the win. And now they said, and then they came out and said, by the way, a few years ago, Des Bryant, hey, that was a catch. But I feel like this rule is you're going about it all wrong. I don't think you need to penalize the players on the field. Maybe a hefty fine will do the trick because the players really don't like losing money. But I understand the ejection point of it too. If you lead and you're doing it with intent to injure, yeah, there's an ejection. College football has the same thing called spearing, and they'll go back and they'll review it. And they see if you're actually, not spearing, targeting. If they find out that, yeah, that was actually malicious and there was intent there, you're out of the game. So I like what the NFL is doing there. But this is really going to slow down the NFL. Baseball has a pace of play problem. The NFL is going to have a pace of play problem pretty soon because they review pretty much every freaking play. And if you're going to review whether or not the guy led with his head or not, you're going to sit there and go, oh, what are we doing here again? I mean, it's going to be another 5-minute review. And if you can't figure it out in 30 seconds or not, then you're going to go, oh, yeah, no, it really wasn't, malicious or there was bad intent. But you see players like Vontaze Burfict. I mean, I feel like this guy is going to get flagged every 5 seconds for this penalty. And the point of this is actually it's to protect offensive players because we saw, I think it was in 2013, the NFL had this rule where offensive players couldn't lower their heads. It was for running backs to initiate contact. So what they want you to do is have knees bent, have your hands up, and your head out of the way. So pretty much what they want you to do is just kind of stand there while, say, a Rob Gronkowski just barrels right over you, and that way you get your neck snapped or your spine cracked, or you probably get your shoulder thrown out of place. But I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to get you to lead with your shoulder, not with your head. But when you're in a scrum like that, how do you control that? I mean, I feel like the NFL has to fix that rule because a lot of players are sitting there going, we can't play the game now anymore. And they've asked the referees, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And the referees are, just lead with your shoulder. It's like people that live in Boston, you're trying to clear the snow off your driveway, and they say, don't throw it in the street. Where can I throw it? I don't know, just not in the street. It's kind of like one of those things.
Throw it in the neighbor's yard.
Yeah, just throw it in the neighbor's yard. And then when they throw it back in your yard, just throw it in their first floor window.
It's Charlestown rules. That's how we do it here.
Yeah, if only we had someone from Charlestown. A solid episode of Out of Bounds, John, I would say so.
A nice B show.
Yeah, once again, just a final reminder that you can, of course, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/BTVOB. And you can follow us on Twitter at BTVOB. And you can watch Out of Bounds anytime, anywhere, online at btvaccess.com and, of course, at the BTV Access YouTube page. So for the final time, for John Luck, I'm Brian Berard. Thanks for watching Out of Bounds.